Hey, hey, we are back with chapter 5 of Babylon Mystery Religion. Give me 1 second. Okay. Oh, stay with me here. Okay. Okay. Let me see where I can see the chat. Okay. Whoo. Let me tell you something. This is when this book, like, it really starts getting into some nitty gritty around chapter 5, 6, 7. That is like people are asleep on. Like they don't like they've never even thought of these things. It's just so ingrained in society that they can't comprehend or conceive it. Um, I want you to pray before you listen to this. Just say, Lord, reveal to me the truth of this matter. Um, like, don't just like accept what Ralph Woodrow is saying here. Okay, like, hear me out, please. He's a man. He's prone to mistakes, just like I'm a man, and I'm prone to mistakes. He's doing his level best, though. I can tell you that. Now, that being said, chapter 5 is called obelisks, obelisks, temples, and flowers, or towers. My bad. Okay, so he starts here. Among the ancient nations, not only were statues of gods and goddesses in human form made, but many objects that had a hidden or mystery meaning were part of heathen worship. An outstanding example of this is seen in the ancient use of obelisks. So, if you don't know what an obelisk is, if you're like, what's an obelisk? It is, hold on, it's that thing right there, the Washington Monument. Okay? The Washington Monument. The little thing on top of your church, the little steeple, the little thing on the top, obelisk. Okay? Diodorus spoke of an obelisk 130 feet high that was erected by Queen Semiramis in Babylon. The Bible mentioned an obelisk type image approximately 9 feet in the breadth and 90 feet high. The people fell down and worshiped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up in Babylon. But it was in Egypt, a very early stronghold of the mystery religion, that the use of the obelisk was best known. Many obelisks are still in Egypt, though some have been removed to other nations. One is in Central Park in New York, another in London, and others were transported to Rome. Originally, the obelisk was associated with sun worship, a symbol of Baal, which is a title of Nimrod. The ancients, having rejected the knowledge of the true creator, seeing that the sun gave life to plants and to man, looked upon the sun as a god, the great life giver. To them, the obelisk also had a sexual significance. Realizing that through sexual union life was produced, the phallus, the male organ of reproduction, was considered, along with the sun, a symbol of life. So, the penis. These were the beliefs represented by, page turns, the obelisk. The word images in the Bible is translated from several different Hebrew words. One of those words is matzeba, means standing images or obelisk. Makes me think of matzo balls. Maybe there's a play on words there. 1 Kings 14, 2 Kings 18, 2 Kings 23, Jeremiah 43, Micah 5. Another word is Hamanim, which means sun images. Images dedicated to the sun or obelisks, Isaiah 17 and Isaiah 27. In order for the obelisk to carry out their intended symbolism, they were placed upright or erect. Thus, they pointed up towards the sun as a symbol of the phallus. The erect position also has an obvious significance. Bearing this in mind, it is interesting to notice that when divine judgment was pronounced against this false worship, it was said that these images or obelisks shall not stand up, but would be cast down. Isaiah 27, verse 9. When the Israelites mixed heathen worship into their religion in the days of Ezekiel, they erected an image of jealousy in the entry of the temple. Ezekiel 8. This image was probably an obelisk, the symbol of the phallus, or as Cyrus Schofield says, they were given over to the phallic cults. Placing an obelisk at the entrance of a heathen temple was apparently not an uncommon practice at the time. One stood at the entrance of the temple of Tum, another at the temple of Hathor, the abode of Horus or Tammuz. Interestingly enough, there's also an obelisk at the entrance of St. Peter's in Rome, as the photograph shows on the next page. It is not a mere copy of an Egyptian obelisk. It is the very same obelisk that stood in Egypt in ancient times when the mystery religion came to Rome in pagan days. Not only were obelisks made and erected in Rome, but obelisks of Egypt at great expense were hauled there and erected by the emperors. Caligula had the obelisk now at the Vatican brought from Heliopolis, Egypt, to his circus on the Vatican Hill. And it's important to understand that the word circus means church. Like he's trying to explain this. Like this is the root here. So the church of, because we also have to remember every Roman emperor was the sun god in the flesh. Keep this in mind as we go forward. That's their claim. They are Baal in the flesh. Okay. So the temple or church of Baal was on Vatican Hill. Okay. This is all just, hopefully some dots are getting connected. Where now stands St. Peter's. Heliopolis is but the Greek name of Beth Shemesh, which was the center of the Egyptian sun worship in olden days. In the Old Testament, these obelisks that stood there are mentioned as the images of Beth Shemesh, Jeremiah 43. So I want to take like 5 seconds before I get into this, okay? Like, you got to understand the Osiris mystery religion, Osiris being Nimrod, Baal, the god of death or whatever. The sun, Ra, right? R-A. The sun, Osiris, whatever. The thing is, Osiris is fought by Seth, I believe, or Set. Set cuts him up into like so many pieces and scatters him around. Isis finds all the pieces. Semiramis, in this case, finds all the pieces except for the phallus, except for his penis, puts them together, does this magic ritual, builds a penis out of gold, has sex with it, gets impregnated by the sun's rays through this magical act, then births the reborn Nimrod, aka Tammuz or Horus or Thoris or Thor. So this trinity goes all the way back to Babylon. This whole thing of God like rebirthing himself goes all the way back to Babylon and all that. Because they knew the story in the skies. Satan tried to come in early and corrupt the whole thing. Okay? That God would impregnate a woman, birth himself. Okay? So, this is why they worship the obelisk. This is why almost every one of your churches that have the steeple and the cross and all that, if you notice, the final form of this is a steeple with a obelisk on it, and then you'll have a star on top of the obelisk, and then a cross on top of that. And From my standpoint, that looks like Baal's shaft going into Ishtar or Semiramis, producing Tammuz, because the cross, as we'll find later in this book, is a symbol of Tammuz, the sun god. Okay. So just wanted to lay a foundation. There's two religions in this world. There's worship of the Son of God, the S-O-N of God. And then there's the worship of the S-U-N God. Okay? So hopefully you're not in the latter. Hopefully you're worshiping the Son of God, the S-O-N of God, not the S-U-N God. All right. The very same obelisk that once stood at ancient temple was either the center of Egyptian paganism, now stands before the mother church of Romanism. This seems more than a mere coincidence. The red granite obelisk of the Vatican itself is 83 feet high, 132 feet high with its foundation, weighs 320 tons. In 1586, in order to center in front of the Church of St. Peter's Square, it was moved to its present location by order of Pope Sixtus V. Of course, moving this heavy obelisk, especially in those days, was a very difficult task. Many movers refused the attempt to attempt the feat, especially since the Pope had attached the death penalty if the obelisk was dropped or broken. Finally, a man by the name of Domenico Fontana accepted the responsibility. With 45 winches, 160 horses, and a crew of 800 workmen, the task of moving began. The date was September 10th, 1586. Multitudes crowded the extensive square. While the obelisk was being moved, the crowd, upon the penalty of death, was required to remain silent. Finally, after near failure, the obelisk was erected to the sound of hundreds of bells ringing. See, this whole bell, Baal, the church Baals, all of this goes back to Marduk, the Sacred Heart of God, all of this garbage. The bells, just hear those sleigh bells ring, ding. Who is Santa Claus? Nimrod. Okay, like this, all this stuff, people have no clue. So like we have to be patient with people. We have to tell people like, hey, that's not for me. And when they say, well, what's wrong with it? You say, it's just it goes against what my God says is good. And you just leave it at that. Well, I believe in that God, and I don't. Hey, I'm not arguing. I'm just telling you what like I'm doing. Like you figure that out. That's between you and God. Like we're really at this point in stage where people will not receive any correction. So you basically have to lead and live by example, and then hope that they see the light. I mean, people were going to get killed if they even spoke while this obelisk was being raised, right? Let's see here. The sound of hundreds of bells ringing, the roar of cannons, the loud cheers of the multitude. The Egyptian idol was dedicated to the cross. The cross on top of the obelisk is supposed to contain a piece of the original cross. More Roman garbage. Mass was celebrated, and the Pope pronounced a blessing on the workmen and their horses. Thanks for erecting my sun god symbol. See, there must have been some magic done years and years and years and years ago with this Heliopolis obelisk, right? And there must be this thing must be like a huge piece in the satanic play. You got to realize, just like the Kaaba in Mecca, the sun god, this whole thing and his worship centers, it's all about channeling energy and all of this. So like keep that in mind, these temples, these items, everything, this is all channel points for demons. The drawing on the next page shows the pattern of St. Peter's and the circular court in front of it. At the center of this court stands the obelisk. This court is bordered by a 248 Doric-style columns, which cost approximately $1 million. The style of such columns was borrowed from the styling of pagan temples. So you gotta realize, like, Rome is Mystery Babylon. They've got all these Babylon things. So, like, they're worshiping the sun in secret, and they're saying, "Oh, well, we're just going to baptize all this paganism, and you can say it's, this is St. Peter's Square, right?" Now, listen, I know, like, there are a lot of good-meaning, well-meaning Catholics. Okay, there are a lot of sweet Catholics, a lot of nice Catholics. They have no clue about any of this stuff. To them, it's all pomp, it's all circumstance, it's all traditions. It's so important to remember the occult mystery religion people, the people that have no clue that that's what they're doing. So they're involved and they're practicing and they're doing the mystery religion, right? Lucifer worship, okay? Luciferianism. And they don't know that's what they're doing. They're called the profane because they do, but they do not know, right? The higher rank up in the Catholic Church, the higher rank up in these orders and fraternities and everything, they know. They eventually learn, like, oh, you're worshiping Lucifer. Well, here's the thing. They're taught, trained, molded, and guided that Lucifer is the good God that set man free. Adonai, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, he's the evil archon that trapped man in the Matrix and all this. When you hear people talk about you can escape the Matrix and all this other stuff, that's a Luciferian. That's, someone using it colloquially or as a phrase of something in that sense, but in the sense of you can attain gnosis, knowledge that will let you ascend this, you will ascend this whole thing. That's Luciferian. Okay. Like obelisks, the pagan columns were often regarded as mystery forms of the phallus. Okay. In the vestibule of the pagan temple of the goddess Hierapolis, an inscription referred to the columns reads, "I, Dionysus, dedicate these phalli to Hera, my stepmother." Okay. So this is all pagan. This is all pagan. Has nothing to do with the God of the Bible, except for, like, when the God of the Bible is destroying heathen nations, or he's saying, don't do this. Even as Roman Catholic leaders borrowed other ideas from paganism, it is no surprise that building elaborate, expensive temples also became the custom. Worldly-minded leaders thought they should build temple of greater splendor than those of the old Roman religion. And, this is, if you talk to some people that are like getting into Catholicism or like they leave Catholicism, then they come back, one of their main things they say is like, well, it's just so there's just so much majesty. There's so much tradition. There's the cathedrals, the art, just everything. This is the trap that Satan has set for these people. This is the circus. This bubblegum's getting tired of it. This is the circus that they've been sucked into and now are going, pretty building. This is my God. Right? And they buy it. We know that God directed his people under rulership of Solomon to build a temple in the Old Testament and chose to put his presence there. But in the New Testament, it is clear that the Holy Spirit no longer dwells in temples made with men's hands. Acts 17:24. Bravo. Now God dwells in his people, his true church by the Spirit, says Paul. Ye are the temple of God, the Spirit of God dwelleth in you. 1 Corinthians 3:16. Understand this grand truth. The early church filled with the Spirit never went forth to build temples of stone and steel. They went forth to preach the gospel. Their time was not spent in financial drives, oppressive pledges in order to build fancier buildings than a temple down the street. Now listen, when the Catholics ruled all of Europe outright, and they did for quite some time, they still do. They don't rule it outright, openly, like, hey, we're ruling you, deal with it, kind of thing. They do it in secret through fraternities and night orders and all this other stuff. A town would build a cathedral, people would work on it. This would be their thing. Like, this was like what people did day and night. They would spend 50, 60, 100 years building a cathedral. And, you know, I would love to just see them all fall down in the name of Jesus. Okay. Their time was not spent. Okay. According to Haley's Bible Handbook, we do not have a record of a church building as such being built prior to 222 AD. So for 200 years, the church is just meeting where it can. This is not to suggest it is wrong to have church building. Probably the reason church buildings were not built earlier was because due to persecutions. The first Christians were not allowed to own title to property in Rome. But had they been allowed this privilege, we feel certain that such buildings would have been built simply, not for outward show. They would not have tried to compete with the expensive styling of the heathen temples of splendor, like the Temple of Diana at Ephesus or the Pantheon of Rome. I love this book. So this guy's short, concise. There's not like 5,000 page chapters. But when the church came to political power and wealth under the reign of Constantine, a pattern for building elaborate and expensive church buildings was set and has continued to this day. So, like, a lot of people don't know this. Constantine basically instituted a welfare program, a state program. You know, think of like the roads program in America to build like the interstate system, right? Constantine was like, we're building churches, we're building cathedrals. Every pagan cathedral is getting turned, or you know, temple is getting turned into a cathedral. We're rededicating it to all this other stuff like that. He went on a full bender. Now, not all of them, most of them. Most of them, this happened. And this is he's going to make a point here in a second, and this is like the spike that's in people's mind. If they could just pull it out and throw it away, they could like see more clearly. This idea has become so implanted in the minds of people that the word church to most people means a building. But in the biblical word use, the word refers to an assembly or group of people who are themselves the temple of the Holy Spirit. As strange as it may sound, a church building could be totally destroyed, and yet the actual church, the people remain. Ba boom, bada bing, ba boom, like slam dunk. How many of y'all have been to a place and the preacher or the pastor say, "We're in God's house right now"? Like, your church is not God's house. Like, your little building that you got, that's not God's house. God's house is the believers. So like, this whole thing is, you can dedicate a place to God, you can set it apart for his purposes, but it's his house is the believer. And that is like a thing. When you say the church, people think of a building. They don't think of the people. Most of the time, if they're in, you know, this system. The majority of expensive church buildings that have been built over the centuries have featured a tower. Each generation of church builders has copied the former generation, probably never questioning the origin of the idea. Some towers have cost fortunes to build. They have added no spiritual value. Jesus, of course, never built such structure when he was on earth, nor did he give any instructions for them to be built after his departure. So true. How then did this tower tradition in church architecture begin? He is just beating this one like a ragged mule. If the reader will permit us to a certain liberty at this point, we will suggest a theory which points back to Babylon. Of course, we all remember the Tower of Babel. The people said, "Let us make brick, let us build a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven." The expression unto heaven is no doubt a figure of speech for a great height, as was also the case when cities with walls that reached up to heaven were mentioned. We are not to suppose those Babel builders intended to build clear up to heaven of God's throne. Instead, there's sufficient evidence to show that the tower, commonly called the ziggurat, was connected to their religion with sun worship. Of all the lofty monuments in Babylon, the towering ziggurat must certainly have been one of the most spectacular constructions of its time. Rising majestically above its huge encircling wall of towers around the vast square chambers were set for pilgrims as well as for the priest who looked after the ziggurat. Koldewey called this collection of buildings the Vatican of Babylon. It has been suggested that one of the meanings of the name of the goddess Astarte or Semiramis, written as Ashtart, means the woman who made towers. The goddess Sybil, who is also identified with Semiramis, was known as the tower-bearing goddess. The first, says Ovid, that erected towers in cities and was represented with a tower-like crown on her head was also Diana, see page 17. In the symbolism of the Catholic Church, the tower is emblematic. Excuse me. I just wanted to get on here and read. I was fired up, and now I'm yawning. Sorry. It's all the lighting and the reading. I wish I could was reading it on screen. Emblematic of the Virgin Mary, how does this all connect? Some ancient towers, as we all know, were built for military purposes for watchtowers, but many of the towers were built in Babylonian Empire were exclusively religious towers connected with a temple. In those times, a stranger entering Babylon city could have no difficulty locating its temple, we're told, for high above the flat-roofed houses the tower could be seen. The Catholic Encyclopedia says it is a striking fact that most Babylonian cities possessed a temple tower. Now, I want you to think, in a lot of cities, especially like European cities and a lot of places where the Catholics took over, they would have local municipalities or governments pass a law that nothing could be built higher than the top of the steeple, right? So like the church would be the highest building there in the city. Just a cool fact that a lot of people don't know. Is it possible that Babylon, as with other things we have mentioned, could be the source of the religious towers? We recall that it was while they were building a huge Tower of Babel that the dispersion began. It is certainly not impossible that as men migrated to various lands, they took the idea of a tower with them. Though these towers have developed into different forms in different countries, yet towers in one form or one another remain. You know, side note, because we talked about obelisk and towers. You know who builds a lot of towers nowadays and has obelisks around them? Let's just say he's the greatest. All right. Towers have long been established part of the religion of the Chinese. The pagoda, linked with the word goddess in Nankin, is shown in our illustrations. Yeah, those Chinese, like, where they stack up on top of each other. In the Hindu religion, scattered above the large temple enclosures are great pagodas or towers rising above the surrounding countries. Everywhere they could be seen by the people, and thus their devotion to their idolatrous worship was increased. Many of these pagodas are several hundred feet high and are covered with sculptures representing scenes in the lives of gods of the temple or eminent saints. Among the Mohammedans, also, though in some different form, can be seen towers in their religion. The first illustration of the following page shows the numerous towers called minarets at Mecca. Towers of this style also used at the famous Church of Saint Sophia. At Constantinople, the use of towers were also carried out in Christendom, Catholic and Protestant. The tower of Great Cathedral of Cologne rises 515 feet above the street, while that the Cathedral of Ulm, Germany, is 528 feet high. Even small chapels often have a tower of some kind. It is a tradition that is seldom questioned. At the top of many church towers, a spire often points to the sky. Several writers link that, perhaps not without some justification, the steeples and spires with the ancient obelisk. There's evidence, said one, to show that the spires of our churches owe their existence to the upright or obelisk outside the temples of former ages. Another says there are still in existence today remarkable specimens of original phallic symbols, steeples on the churches, obelisks, all show the influence of our phallus worshipping ancestors. Now, I'm going to go, that's the end of that chapter. That one was called Towers. What was it called? Obelisk, Temples, and Towers. Next chapter is called Crosses. Is the cross a pagan idol? Spoiler alert, yes. So, one of the things I like to ask people is when they see like a Burger King, right? They don't go into a Burger King and expect to see like a McDonald's menu on the wall and order a Big Mac, right? You want to go into Burger King and order a Whopper, right? So if we take a modern church or church building, a classical church building, it's got all these sun god symbols on it. It's got the cross on it. It's got all these other things, pictures of Jesus, pictures of Mary, pictures of the saints, obelisks, which is a sun god symbol. The list goes on, really. What are they advertising? Like if I drove to Burger King, I know I'm going in and there's going to be a Burger King. It's a burger place, right? If I see a Pizza Hut, there's pizza there, right? So like if the church is this building, right, that's like advertising a product, right? What are they selling there? Are they selling the God of the Bible? Or there are people trapped in this system that believe in the God of the Bible and they're stuck in traditions and ways? Yeah. But I want you to think about this. Most churches, the overwhelming majority of them preach against God's law. They teach and preach a lawless Messiah, the lawless one. Their whole building is covered up with sun god symbols. When are we going to wise up? When are we going to demand, like, if we're in a church, hey, why do we have these sun god symbols everywhere? Why is this? What are we doing here? Don't we preach the God of the Bible? So it's just interesting. Like, people think they're going to go into a Pizza Hut and not get served pizzas. They think they're not going to go into a temple of the Antichrist and not get sold the Antichrist. Just something to think about. Well, I've had fun. I can't wait for the next chapter. I hope you all have a blessed evening or day or whenever you read this or listen to it. I hope you're reading along with me. It's a cool book. I'll try to find like a PDF of it to put in so people can read along. But Pray. Pray and ask the Lord to give you understanding of like, symbols and stuff. You know, I wouldn't know any of this stuff if it wasn't for the mercy and grace of God. Like that's it. Like I'm not special. He was just merciful and showed me. So we're so in the levels of darkness that um it takes a miracle to pull us out, and that's what God has for us, a miracle through Jesus, through his mercy, and through leading us back to the word. And once we get in alignment with the word, we listen to the word, we read the word, we obey the word, and we start seeing these things. He gives us eyes to see. We can say, wait a second, why is my church covered in sun god symbols? And why is my church preaching against the simple black and white words of the Bible? And who is this they're preaching? Who are they trying to teach people? What is all this? And then you go ask your pastor, and he's like, well, listen, I went to seminary. Hey, listen, what Bible college did you graduate? Yeah, well, hey, I'll look into that. Anyways, I love